Good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Today's roundtable with Green Party of Canada leader Annamie Paul and special guests, shadow cabinet critics for the climate, Dr. Imre Szeman and Dr. Farrukh Chishtie, and climate youth activist Jenna Jendal Al-Rifai will now begin. La conférence de presse avec Annamie Paul, chef du Parti Leader du Canada, et des invités spéciaux, critiques du cabinet fantôme pour le climat, Dr. Imre Szeman et Dr. Farrukh Chishtie, et jeune activiste climatique Jenna Jendal Al-Rifai, va maintenant commencer. Merci.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Thank you for being with us this morning. Merci d'être ici avec nous. We chose to have this roundtable this morning first because it's my real pleasure to introduce our newly appointed shadow cabinet critics for the climate, Dr. Szeman and Dr. Chishtie, who will introduce themselves shortly. And of course, whenever we are able to, we always seek to involve our youth climate activists who have really been keeping the movement alive, who have been keeping attention drawn toward the climate, even during the days of the pandemic, and certainly have always contributed a great deal to our discussions on the climate and on the future of tackling the climate emergency here in Canada. This is something that has always been important. And during the pandemic, I said many times that we could not forget the climate emergency because it had not forgotten us, that it had not taken a pause. And we see these days how much so the climate emergency has not taken a pause. And so we, as always, are looking to the future. We are looking towards solutions. We are looking towards progressive policies that will allow Canada to do its fair share. We know through the work of young activists like Jenna and many others, through our work as a party, through the work of many civil society organizations, that the debate over whether there is a climate crisis, the debate over whether we are living the impacts already of our changing climate is over. And so now is the moment to be moving as swiftly and quickly as possible towards solutions, towards collaboration and cooperation around climate action, and proposing the world-leading policies on the climate, because that is what people in Canada expect. They expect political leadership to be ambitious, to have a very forward-looking and very positive and doable agenda that they can rally around. And so that's what we will be speaking about. But first, we will be talking about the state of play. I think it's really important for us just to take a look and see what is this particular moment that we are living in right now in Canada, and then also what has been proposed in order to address it. Is it enough? Do we need more? And what are some of those solutions? Alors, merci d'être ici avec nous aujourd'hui. Le but de notre conversation, c'est d'avoir un peu d'un bilan, un peu d'une évaluation de l'état actuel de la crise climatique et comment ça touche les communautés ici au Canada. On voit partout, on voit les feux de forêt, on voit les communautés qui ont été évacuées. On voit que notre qualité d'air est terrible en ce moment dans plusieurs régions au Canada. On voit l'impact direct du changement climatique. Alors, c'est le moment de parler des solutions. C'est le moment de considérer comment le Canada va assumer un rôle de leadership dans la lutte contre la crise climatique. Et aussi d'introduire nos deux membres de notre cabinet fantôme responsables pour le climat, Dr. Szeman et Dr. Chishtie, et aussi de donner un accueil très chaleureux à Jenna, qui est une militante pour le climat aussi, parce qu'on cherche toujours d'amplifier les voix, d'augmenter les voix de nos jeunes militants, exactement parce qu'ils proposent les solutions nécessaires et c'est leur futur, leur avenir. So with that, I'm going to ask all of our panelists if they can kindly introduce themselves, and then we're just going to enter right into the discussion. I'm going to start with Jenna. Could you kindly introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, for sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Jenna, for pronouns of she, her. I am a youth climate activist with Climate Strike Canada and a co-founder of Fridays for Future Windsor, Essex. I organize with Mock COP, along other campaigns. And I am very excited to be here today.
Thank you very much for being here with us. Dr. Chishtie, could you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, my name is Farrukh Chishtie, and my pronouns are he and him. And basically, I'm joining from Vancouver in the unceded territory of Musqueam. My areas of research are on climate change impacts and climate science adaptation and mitigation, and particularly on the extreme events that we are witnessing and experiencing right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Szeman.
Hi, my name is Dr. Imre Szeman. I'm University Research Chair of Environmental Communication at the University of Waterloo. My research focuses mainly on social cultural elements of energy transition. I'm a member of the Royal Society of Canada, and what I want to do is really bring best practices from academic research to bear on climate policy, which I don't think has happened to date.
Thank you very much for those introductions. And so let's just jump right into it. And I don't think that anyone in Canada at the moment has been able to ignore or go unawares about what has been happening over the last little while. But let's just talk about that for a moment. I'll just start with you, Dr. Chishtie, and then we're just going to open it up for any of you to jump in, just to try to keep it a bit a bit organic, the conversation. What are you seeing out on the West Coast? What are you seeing out in BC?
Well, it's unprecedented heat waves, as you've seen, with a lot of human losses, deaths, and then wildfires. And this is across the West Coast. Last year was also quite difficult with wildfires happening and coming right across up to Seattle, where we witnessed within Vancouver and in the BC area unprecedented levels of bad air quality due to the wildfires. And right now, this is just a lot of impacts that are across the West Coast with record temperatures, and we are living through it. So this is just this is just the tipping point. We are expecting even worse to happen if action is not taken now. So basically, this is an eye opener, and this is the time for us to act. And Green Party has all the right at it. I mean, we place climate and change impacts and climate as environmental sustainability at the top of our priorities. So this is the time for us to really make a push to change, given all that is happening.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Szeman, you really get around, so I'm just maybe should check and ask where I find you. Are you also on the West Coast right now?
Yeah, right now I'm in Winlaw, BC. I'm living steps away from the Trozo Creek fire. It's across the Slocan River from me. It's visible every single day. I and my family and I have been enduring now for a week or more some of the worst air quality on the planet, and that is not a subjective claim. That is by looking at figures. It doesn't look like it's going to go away. Projections 2 weeks ahead don't seem to bear any rain, and we've already been under an evacuation alert. It looks like many of the people that I know in the valley are also bearing the same thing, but some of them have also been under evacuation orders. I should also say that Farrukh was right that this is a crisis that should bring to bear the necessity of acting quickly on climate. it's not just something, these heat waves that have happened in Canada, they've happened in Europe, they've happened in Russia. There's huge fires right now in Australia. They've been experienced in Pakistan and India. And what we're experiencing now, I'm thinking especially of the air quality, is something that people around the world have already endured. So we're very deep into this climate crisis. And it's, to me, shocking that this is not something that is taken seriously by other political parties. There are policies announced, they have been now for decades, and there has been no action. It has not been followed through on. And it's time to start doing that. This is not something to be left aside. It's not something to kick down the road for somebody else to deal with. It'll be too late when that happens.
Thank you. And Jenna, you're part of a global movement. I mean, you're Fridays for Future and Climate Strikers. You're part of a national and a global movement. What are you hearing from your fellow activists? I mean, I'm sure that you're in touch with some out in BC. What are they telling you? What's it like for them at the moment?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm calling in from South and Western Ontario. So while there are other fires in Northern Ontario, we haven't seen anything other than those heat waves and erratic weathers. But I've been in contact with my friends in BC or in Alberta and Manitoba, and they're reporting, again, bad air quality. Some can't even leave their houses because it is dangerous for them to breathe in that air quality. And globally, I mean, my friends in Germany, in Belgium, where there's floods, in the most affected areas in the global south, you also hear the same thing. For example, Madagascar, there is the crops can't grow, and then the people are hungry and starving. So we see the impact of the climate crisis in different places in different ways, but it's all one of the same. It is the climate crisis, and we need to act now.
So can we touch on that just briefly before we move into the talking about, what has been proposed and whether it's enough and what else needs to be proposed. The forest fires they're visible, and we see the images and so forth. But I believe I think it was you, Dr. Chishtie, but someone just touched briefly on, for instance, the sudden deaths. We've mentioned the impact in other countries as well, the flooding, but there are other aspects. I mean, the impact on crops, the impact on sea life. I will just, whoever gets their hand up first to talk about that, if you can talk about some of the more unspoken consequences of this particular moment that we're living through and the knock-on impact. Dr. Chishtie, I don't see anyone.
Yeah, I think the fact that our systems are not up to par, a lot of people who are impacted who are from the vulnerable community, and they were not actually we were not expecting this or not were ready for this, and they didn't have enough cooling, and a lot of the time the fact that socioeconomically the poor and vulnerable actually are the ones that are most impacted in these climate impacts, in these disasters, if you will. So we have to, of course, on the side of science, take care of the emissions. We have to take care of future proofing, using disaster mitigation strategies, but a deeper addressing of social vulnerabilities also needs to take place, which Green Party advocates, which comes in the form of social justice, which comes in the form of making sure that people when they are faced with such disasters are able to cope with it, which a lot of these other parties have not addressed, and that's also something, for example, it took a long time for the NDP folks to issue a state of emergency here, when all the stuff is going on. So it's like a lot of these things are not actually addressed at a root level where we also feel the impacts. And unfortunately, those impacts happen on the on the people who are, living near the disasters, or actually are so poor that, we don't plan ahead for them, and they are actually marginalized.
Mm-hmm.
The marginalized communities, people who are, again, not socially, socioeconomically at a state. So those issues also are coming up front, and actually are, that is the status quo of the day, which the Green Party wants to address. But with these disasters, it's actually coming up right up front, and we are seeing that the most impact happens to these vulnerable populations.
Yeah,
Women,
Dr.
children,
Szeman, do you want to just add anything about again the impact on the natural world beyond the forest fires?
Well, I will keep it with the forest fires, and I'll explain why. One of the frustrations that people who are living here have is that the policies that right now are attempting to address climate change, I'll just take one, for example, which is subsidies to buy electric cars. It misses some important elements of what has to happen. So they asked me, why aren't there subsidies for forest mitigation? Why aren't there subsidies for somebody to work on their land to cut down dead timber, which is arising, it's diseased, it's older, it hasn't been properly managed. If they had that, they would do that kind of work, and they would be able to afford that kind of work, and this might have helped with these forest fires. It's simply not there. It's a disaster waiting to happen. There isn't the right kind of attention to the natural world, and this is going to happen over and over again with the kind of failure of governance that Farrukh pointed to. So this is a province that has never used the emergency alert system. It's shocking. Yeah.
Jenna, we moving now into this moment in terms of policy. We have, I hope that you've seen some of the other events that we've held with some of your colleagues about the plans as they came up, whether it was Bill C-12 or the new target. There has been let's say a certain flurry of activity over the last 3 to 4 months. Looking at the totality of that, the new climate target that has been formally submitted to the United Nations of 40 to 45% reductions below 2005 levels for greenhouse gases. Looking at Bill C-12, which has the Accountability Act. Looking at the proposals in the budget for the climate. When you look at all of that, you and your colleagues, what is your feeling? I mean, do you feel that this is enough? What are the holes that? Well, I won't presume to say that there are. What is your assessment?
Yeah, so my first thing is that emissions won't save us. Emissions doesn't address the societal fabric that caused the climate crisis, colonialism, capitalism, imperialism. But even that is something that our country is struggling with. We are behind on our targets. So even the simplest, littlest things that we can do as a country, we are not doing. And I also think that internally, nationally, we're not seeing much of action. We see provinces on their own also taking action in the opposite direction. Ontario, for example, passed a law during the pandemic that eased environmental regulations. The BC government keeps supporting cutting of old growth trees. But even Dr. Imre said, electric cars, and subsidizing that isn't going to do much for us, isn't going to do much for anybody, because the source of energy will be non-renewable. The source of energy will always be the fossil fuels. And I think it's really important for Canada, just generally internationally, to acknowledge its place in the world and its imperialist past, colonialist past, and current present, and that we should acknowledge that anything in terms of energy planning or societal change must not come at the expense of other countries, must not come at the expense of the marginalized communities. And any support for any policy for mitigating the climate crisis must come first for the marginalized communities. And that is not something that we are seeing currently. We see an election coming soon, and I hope that during this election, we will see more climate champions going into the office we see them more advocating for climate policies that are actually impactful, that are actually radical. And I'm sure that climate and the climate crisis will be an important issue this coming election.
Mm-hmm. And Dr. Chishtie and Dr. Szeman, taking the totality of what has been proposed, as I said, this was the moment of the climate, the action that we were waiting for so many years, and we've talked about the moment that we're in. As Jenna pointed out, we have never succeeded in meeting even our more modest targets. We're one of the top 5 worst emitters in the world. And our greenhouse gas emissions have increased year on year, every year for the last 6 years. Looking at what has been proposed, all that has been proposed, what is your assessment about its
Apologies, we will begin in 1 moment. Apologies about that, everybody. There's just a brief storm, but I would love for Imre or Jana, if you could finish answering that question, that'd be great.
So at the risk of jumping in here perhaps too quickly, I have 2 things that I think are important to say. So first off, somebody who looks at the rhetoric of communication will immediately note that interesting figure, 40 to 45%. There's no exact figure being thrown out. It's just kind of in the ball, kind of in the region. Hopefully we get somewhere there, maybe 41, maybe 45. This compared to the recent announcement by the European Union, their Fit for 55% plan, where they've committed to a 55% reduction under in the terms of the Paris Agreement. And they've managed to do that with 27 member states that have really different economies, have different levels of development. They have figured out a way to make this happen. I will put it in the following terms. In the 2021 Climate Change Performance Index, Canada ranked 58th out of 61 countries, 58th. Imagine what that would look like. Imagine how we would react if that's where we were in the League of Nations in terms of COVID vaccination. It's unacceptable. I find it, all I can say, and you can hear it in my voice, I am puzzled by the way in which governments have chosen to address climate change.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I think that we need to be taking a lot more action than we currently are, and it's really problematic. Mr.
Hello, I'm back. I'm sorry, the power just went off in my entire building. Thank goodness for hotspots. I still don't have the internet, but hopefully my phone will help us. I apologize for that, and sorry for interrupting you. Perhaps maybe if we can just jump back in where we were talking about the assessment of our policies. Have we gone through that part yet, or yes, we have? Okay, so perhaps then because we want to keep moving along, and we'll be having many more of these discussions. Given the assessment, let's start in with Jenna. Perhaps Jenna, you did give some prescriptions already, but going into, as you said, this period where I hope we won't be having an election. I think that Dr. Szeman's and Dr. Chistie's experience out in BC with the forest fires raging and the really immediate concerns that people have should be enough to keep us out of an election. But if we are, whether it's now or it's a month or 6 months, what are the things that you would be hoping to see in terms of climate policy going into that election? What kind of commitments, not just from one party, but from all of the parties on the climate?
Yeah, I don't want an election to happen, but if it happens, we'll be ready for it. I think just we want the just transition and just recovery frameworks to be at the forefront of people's policies and ideas, because those will give us the tools to truly rebuild our society to be more fair, to be more sustainable, and to be uplifting to other marginalized communities. I want moratoriums on like pipelines and fossil fuels. Why do we keep spending so much money and time and effort onto a thing that we know is destroying us and we know is not going to last us a very long time? This is something that annoys me so much. People keep saying, oh, we don't have any alternatives to fossil fuels. Well, maybe invest money in finding the solutions instead of just throwing money at new pipelines. I want to see people coming up and talking to more, not just climate activists, but more people affected by those crises. I want to see leaders from all political parties to take stances against not just like the environmental disasters that have been happening, but the things that lead up to them, the roots that are in our society. Like, let's talk about corporations. Let's put some caps on them. Let's tax some rich people. Let's stand against imperialism. Let's stand against colonialism. Let's stand against the things that have made the climate crisis possible. And I want to see leaders, and I want to see candidates and politicians stand firmly against it and show some strong action against the things that have caused the climate crisis. Not just sweet words, but like clear plans and clear reach out in networking to show us that they really do care. So yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah. Wonderful. And Dr. Szeman and Dr. Chishtie, as you know, and of course you're a part of, you will be a part of this going forward, the development of our own climate policies. We have a lot and we're very excited about them, and it's a very positive agenda. But maybe I would just ask both of you if there were a couple in particular that are really exciting you at this moment, a couple that you think, had they been in place in this moment, or were they to be put in place in the future, would make a real difference in terms of what we are seeing. I'm just going to ask you for a couple, just because I think our time, we're running to the end of our time. And then we will of course invite you back to talk about the entire set of suite of plans and policies that we have. So, but maybe what are a couple at the moment that are really exciting you? Dr. Chishtie?
Yes, I think we should be really getting ourselves out of this, bad position we're in terms of emissions. Like it or not, we have to play our part, and we have to understand that we are part of this global crisis, and we can play a really positive role. Whereas we've, as Professor Imre was pointing out, we've been part of this rhetoric, that we are addressing climate change and the emissions are going up, so we have to deal with that. And I think the other thing is from a scientific and socio-technical point of view, just letting go of the fossil fuel addiction. I mean, we have been investing in these, technologies that are old, destroying the planet, not just us and the indigenous communities, but they have an impact globally. So we have to face this huge reality that the fossil fuel industry and the fossil fuel rhetoric is just old and destructive. And for me, those two seem to stand out as key areas for us to at least address this climate change crisis that we're in. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Dr. Szeman?
The platform is still in development. So Farrukh and I think, want to maybe not speak very, very definitively, but I do think that I'll just follow up on him. And I know this will displease some Canadians. It will perhaps come across as a threat, but future development of any kind of extractive industries, especially fossil fuels, simply can't go ahead. When I'm citing figures, and when Farrukh does, we are not citing radical organizations, we're citing things, or we try to look at studies like by the International Energy Association, who this week released a report that says that if there's any new exploration of fossil fuels after 2023, then we simply will not be able to reach that 1.5 degree Celsius target. So my challenge, I think our platform will be a challenge to the current government and to other parties to say, tell us why 40 to 45% is enough. Tell us why that's enough. Why do you think that's enough when other countries have exceeded that? Tell us why it's okay to continue some practices under the kind of fiction that it's, you will wind them down. So the platform we will do will not play these games. It is going to take seriously, based on knowledge that we have before us, as to what has to happen so that we have less of the fires that we're enduring out west and in Northern Ontario and elsewhere in Canada.
Wonderful. Well, that's wonderful. Here's what excites me. First, that people in Canada have demonstrated throughout the last year and a half that they have what it takes to be ambitious, that they have what it takes to pivot very quickly in order to protect their communities, to protect their neighbors, that they are willing to do those things. It has also inspired me to see, and it didn't last very long, but for the time that it did, it was inspiring to see levels of government, to see various political actors, various political parties coming together to collaborate and cooperate in the face of an impending threat. So imagine what we could do if we could harness that again. Imagine what we could do if there was that spirit of collaboration and cooperation and true understanding that we are in this together, and so we need to solve it together. And I'm very inspired by the idea that Canada can be what I remember it to be when I was a child, which is a country that was incredibly ambitious for its future, incredibly ambitious on the policies that mattered the most, social policy, climate policy, and I'm excited about resuming that role. Dr. Szeman, to your point, absolutely. Why can't Canada be the country with the most ambitious target for the climate? Why can't Canada be the country that is leading on green technology, on a green recovery? Why can't Canada be that ambitious? And I believe that it can, and I believe that's what people in Canada want. And so we are going to be proposing that kind of ambition. And I know that Jenna and Fridays for Future and all of the climate strikers, I know that that is not only the ambition that they want, but they have proposed, a path forward as well. And we're looking forward to supporting them in that. Alors, je voulais remercier nos invités, nos deux membres de notre cabinet fantôme, d'être ici avec nous, et Jenna aussi d'être avec nous aujourd'hui. Nous allons continuer à proposer les solutions. Nous allons continuer à proposer les politiques les plus progressistes pour le climat, pour réduire nos gaz à effet de serre, pour assurer que nous augmente notre progrès et vers une économie verte, et assurer qu'aucune personne au Canada est laissée sans emploi, assurer que notre transition est qui est équitable et durable aussi. Thank you so much to our new Shadow Cabinet critics for being with us today. Thank you so much to Jenna for being with us today as we talk about the solutions, the progressive policies that will make a difference in tackling this defining crisis of our time. We are going to continue to propose the solutions, and as strange as it may seem, I feel incredibly optimistic and incredibly hopeful because we do have the solutions, we do have the ideas, and I know that people in Canada have the desire. And so if we can match that with political will, there's really nothing we can't do, and I'm excited about that. Merci à tout le monde d'être ici avec nous aujourd'hui. Thank you for being with us, and please stay tuned for other events, other roundtables, other panels on the climate. There's much more to come. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. This ends the Facebook Live portion of the press conference. Thank you for joining us. Ceci met fin à la partie Facebook Live de la conférence de presse. Merci à tous. We'll now begin with questions. One question, one follow-up. Please use the raised hand feature if you wish to ask a question, and please tell us which media organization you're with. Nous allons commencer les questions. Une question, un suivi. Veuillez utiliser la fonction de lever la main si vous voulez poser une question et veuillez identifier votre média. We will begin with Alex Ballingall from the Toronto Star. Go ahead, Alex, please. One question, one follow-up.
Hi, thanks very much for taking our questions. Yeah, no, looking forward to seeing the platform for sure on the climate stuff. But I wanted to veer back to the situation surrounding your leadership, Ms. Paul. I've reached out to, you're talking last week about how this is sort of a time-limited crisis and that the new federal council is going to come in and that hopefully things will quiet down for you, or things there'll be peace, I guess, in the party. But it seems like, so I've reached out to all the candidates and there isn't, I'm not hearing a ringing endorsement of your leadership from them. In fact, I'm hearing either nothing or opposition to your leadership and calls for the vote in a confidence vote as soon as possible. There's only been one unequivocal statement of support in your leadership from the 24 candidates that I've received so far. So I just wanted to see what you make of that situation.
Sorry, are you talking about councillors or candidates for the election? I'm not.
The 24 people running for the 12 vacant spots on federal council.
Well, look, I can't speak to that, Alex. I don't know. I wasn't part of those conversations. All I can say is that for me, and this is an example, I'm just determined for as long as I can, and to the extent that I can, to keep my attention focused on what it should be focused on. The Green Party offers the most ambitious, most progressive policies to tackle the climate crisis. We always have, we always will. And certainly at this moment in time, whether nationally or internationally, that is just something that deserves as much attention as we can give it to it. And so I think that it would be a real disservice to Canada at this time for a party that really has always been at the forefront on climate policy to be distracted with anything that isn't related to that, unless it's our progressive social policies in other areas as well. And so that's what I'm going to be focused on. And the council elections, they're ongoing. There's still, I believe, another 2 or 3 weeks for members to vote. And, that's democracy in action. I respect that process. And I'm looking forward to working with our new councillors when they get elected.
Can I just jump in for a minute? I have to say, Alex, with all due respect, I cannot go outside and breathe. And you are using this platform, this time when we're talking about climate, to ask about internal party politics, about which I will say I know nothing. I think that this is part of the problem. I respect your journalism. I read you as a journalist. I don't get it. I'm sorry, I don't get it. We hardly have any time here to talk. You have other occasions to talk to people. You've talked to 24 people, you've said to us. Can we talk about what's at issue here? This is frustrating to me as an academic, as a scholar, as a citizen. Let's talk in the short amount of time we have about the fact that Canada's on fire.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Szeman. Alex, I respect your, again, you are asking the questions that you feel that you need to ask. But as I said, it's really a moment for me to try to refocus our attention where it matters, particularly because we do have such great candidates running who are really committed to being a strong voice on the climate in this moment. And my job is to give them the most certainty and the most support that I can. And I think that is by doing events like this and trying to make sure that our policies get out there so that people in Canada can consider the difference they might make in their lives.
Thank you, Mr.
All right, well, thanks so much. Just as a follow-up, thanks for the feedback. But I guess what I've been hearing from these responses that I've got from the candidates, I guess is a lot of them seem to be upset about obviously the Noah Zatzman episode and how that played out, and they wanted to see you take responsibility or acknowledge some sort of failure around that, or apologize for it, or refute his comments. And I don't think I've heard you ever do that or talk about why you haven't done that. So that's what I wanted to ask you. If this is part of the reason why there's still opposition to you in your party, why haven't you done what a lot of people wanted you to do and refute those comments?
So my answer, Alex, is the same that I just gave. Revisiting or continuing to draw focus away from where it should be is just simply not anything that I'm willing to do. We have a different way, or at least I believe that we have a different way of doing things. We believe in reconciliation. We believe in resolution. We believe in trying to address things in a way that is honorable. And that's always my intention. This moment in time, again, I have said, and I know that it seems self-interested for me to say that, but this is not a moment in time that we should be considering an election. I noticed that in the Toronto Star, there was an excellent opinion piece laying out the reasons that we shouldn't be considering an election right now. But if that is the moment that we face, that we have to confront, then the Green Party needs to be ready for it, because this is a moment where the Green Party and its policies and its candidates are really needed on the climate in particular, but also our progressive social policies as well. And also the difference we make to people right at the very grassroots level in their own communities, because Green MPs are excellent MPs. So for me, I have only so much time in any given day. I can either look to the future and look to supporting our candidates and our party, or I can look to the past, and I've made my decision.
Thank you, Ms. Paul. Next is Christopher Reynolds, Canadian Press. Go ahead, please, Chris. One question, one follow-up, please.
Hi, Ms. Paul. Thanks very much for taking our questions. You mentioned gearing up for and being ready for an albeit unwanted election. I just wanted to confirm that the Greens campaign working group, or its campaign committee, has triggered a kind of clause that kicks off an election mode for the party, kind of like a state of urgency inside the organization that signals an election or a likely election is the priority of the hour. So I just wanted to confirm when this sort of clause was triggered and whether that means the AGM slated for August 20th has been postponed.
I can't. Thanks, Chris, for the question. I can't speak to any of that. I don't have any information to provide on either of those questions.
Would there be any advantages, do you think, to holding an AGM, a gathering of members, after the writ has dropped? So if an election is called before August 20th, would there be any sense in holding an election, an AGM?
Well, our federal council decided to hold the AGM on August the 21st, and that's going ahead. Preparations are underway, and so again, this is a challenging time. There are 2 years left in the mandate of this parliament, in theory. And there's so much work to be done. There's so much work that could still be done. We still do not have the Just Transition Act. And as the sister of a roughneck on the oil crews in Alberta, I should say former, because my brother lost his job when the pandemic hit. As a person who has just welcomed 2 members of the shadow cabinet who are living in a part of our country which is literally on fire, and as someone seeking to represent people in a riding where I know that it's almost certain that today or the next day someone will die of an opioid toxic poisoning, there are just a lot of things that would suggest that we need to get back to Parliament, and September should be the return from the summer recess and not an election. So that's, again, that's really where we should be as a country. I really hope that that's where we will be as a country. But our party has to continue doing the things that we regularly do, and holding a convention is a decision our council took, and one that's going ahead.
Thanks.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Ms. Paul. We have a question from Palak Mangat, The Hill Times. Go ahead, Palak, please. One question, one follow-up.
Hi, Ms. Paul. Thanks again for doing this and taking our questions and arranging this. I just want to circle back. We do know that, you know, last week when I had asked you, you did acknowledge that you are operating on sort of an assumption, much like some of my colleagues, or I guess you had said, and that you said that you were assuming goodwill on some of those seeking to fill the spots that are up for grabs on the federal council. I guess my question is just in light of the recent days, you know, we had Mr. Murray come out and pretty vocally say that that you did not make an effort to quote unquote consolidate the leadership candidates into a team after your leadership victory. And there was also claims that the arbitration process has created a constitutional problem that isn't going away, end quote. I know I just threw a lot at you, so I'd just like to get your reflections on that and maybe what you would say to those who do harbor such feelings. Thank you.
I know that our party is no different in the respect that when you have a leadership contest and you have eight contestants in it, that as much as I received a very strong mandate from our members, people voted for other candidates and other good candidates as well. And so that's just a fact of life. And you know, I make the joke, but I say it also in seriousness. I don't think you will find any party leader of any major party where there is complete unanimity in their leadership. And I accept that. We have a party with people with many different points of view. We share common values, core values, but one of them is trying to make sure that we create enough space for a variety of points of view. So I accept with a great deal of humility and also understanding that there will be people that have divergent points of view. But you know, coming back again to my time and my energy, I'm just wondering again how I could possibly, for as long as I'm in this role, look people like Jenna and climate strikers and Fridays for Future activists and all of the young people that are counting on me as one party leader, not the only one, but one party leader that they're expecting to come together and figure out how we're going to ensure a livable future for people in this country. I don't know how I could possibly explain that I spent months of time talking about internal party politics as opposed to talking about the issues that mattered and the issues that I got involved in politics to try to make a difference and try to contribute something to. So I have made the choice about where my energy and my attention is going to be focused. And I really encourage anyone who cares about the same issues that I do to do the same. Because we, unfortunately, it seems, won't have much time until the next election. And every Green who is elected, every Green MP who is elected to Parliament becomes yet another strong voice on behalf of the climate and on behalf of the kind of ambitious, but also doable policies that we need as a country in order to do our fair share to limit runaway global warming.
Do you have a follow-up, Palak, please?
Yeah, thank you, Rosie. Just as a follow-up, and I know that you've been cautious to comment on party matters, and that, you know, there's still, despite that, there are still those who remain, at least out in the public, and saying that uniting and building trust within the party starts with honesty. I guess my question for you is, how would you respond to this? And sort of the other prong of that is just, you've spoken in the past about, you know, how this has taken a toll on you, this process and this playing out in public. My question is just, how are you doing? Knowing that the writing possibly could be on the wall in less than a month here, knowing that we could be launched into a federal election, how are you doing?
Well, it's again, the party and certainly my experience with Greens across the country has been one of people who are really committed to doing politics differently and to being honorable. That's very important to me, and I will continue to do that and continue to be professional and disciplined and to try to focus, again, as much as I can, the attention where it should be, which is on the issues and policies. And in that respect, I have to apologize to Jenna. You know, it's I had hoped there would be some questions for you, but at least you got a platform in order to share your view. And so at least there was that. That's the silver lining. And so for me, that's what I'm going to try to do, and that's what I'm going to continue to do by recruiting extraordinary people like Dr. Chishtie and Dr. Szeman to our shadow cabinet. It makes it clear that there are many, many Greens who are really focusing where they should be, focusing their attention where it should be. And really, really committed to trying to get that work done and trying to make sure that we get more Greens elected, and beyond that, that we continue to serve our traditional role, which is to propose the most progressive, forward-thinking, ambitious, but also doable policies related to the climate and social policy in general. So, you know, I am seeking to be as strong as I can because this is a moment that requires strength from all of us. It's a moment that requires us all to dig deep and to bring the best of ourselves to tackling these issues. And I know that we can do it. And certainly I take inspiration from every single panelist here who has also sought to do that as well. That's a great source of inspiration and energy for me. Thank you very much for that question. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Paul. Thank you, Farrukh. I don't think there are any more questions. Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions, s'il vous plaît? Are there any more questions? No more questions. So this concludes today's roundtable. Thank you to all our special guests today for joining us. Merci beaucoup à tout le monde. Ceci conclut la table ronde d'aujourd'hui. Merci à tous nos invités spéciaux. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you so much.